Leah's pulse thundered in her ears as she sprinted through the midnight rain. Her lungs burned, tears and raindrops mingling on her cheeks. He's right behind me. The thought sent a spear of panic through her. Somewhere in the darkness, she could hear Brandon, her ex-fiancé turned nightmare, shouting her name with a mix of rage and manic glee. He was too close. He was always too close. She bolted around a street corner and nearly collided with a pair of late-night pedestrians. A neon sign up ahead cut through the gloom. Mirabelle Grand Hotel. Its glass doors glided open as an oblivious guest stepped out. Leah didn't hesitate. She slipped through the opening and into the bright, marbled lobby. For a split second, the warmth and light felt surreal against her rain-soaked skin. Her sneakers squeaked on the polished floor, drawing a curious glance from the night clerk. Leah caught a glimpse of herself in a decorative mirror. Hair plastered to her head, eyes wide and wild, a deep purple bruise blossoming on her cheek. She looked exactly like what she was. A woman on the run. She had no time. A dark figure appeared beyond the glass doors. Brandon, scanning the lobby like a predator hunting prey. A spike of terror almost rooted Leah to the spot, but she forced her legs into motion. Run, now! She veered away from the clerk's desk before anyone could stop her, making a beeline for a side hallway marked conference rooms, restrooms. Maybe there was a back exit or somewhere, anywhere to hide. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she half ran, half staggered down the corridor. The hotel was quiet at this late hour. Her own ragged breathing sounded deafening. Up ahead, an open doorway spilled a strip of light into the hall. A housekeeping cart sat parked outside, the door propped ajar by its wheel. Staff only. Without thinking, Leah lunged through the doorway, narrowly slipping past a startled maid who was just exiting. "Sorry!" Leah gasped, not slowing. The maid's confused protest echoed behind her, but Leah was already dashing down a narrow service corridor. Her shoes pounded on utilitarian tile as she wound through the bowels of the hotel. Behind her, the distant thud of a door and an angry shout told her that Brandon wasn't far behind. He must have seen her dart this way. Leah's chest constricted. She burst through another door and suddenly found herself in a carpeted hallway of guest rooms. Gilded numbers adorned each door. The normal world of hotel patrons, sleeping peacefully on the other side of these walls, felt impossibly distant from her terrifying reality. Think, she urged herself. She couldn't lead Brandon to an innocent guest's room, and she had no key, no money. Every door she tried was locked tight. In desperation, she pounded softly on one. No response. Either the room was empty, or its occupants weren't inclined to open up to a frantic stranger at midnight. A familiar voice slithered down the corridor, echoing off the ornate wallpaper. "Leah!" Brandon's snarl carried easily in the stillness. "I know you're here, you stupid You can't hide from me." His shout oozed triumph. He was toying with her, trying to flush her out. Leah's blood ran cold. She scrambled farther down the hall, adrenaline lending her speed. Up ahead near the far end, her eyes caught something miraculous. One door was slightly open. The metal housekeeping cart beside it told her why. The maid, Leah realized. This must be the suite the maid had been tending to. The door hadn't closed completely. Brandon's footsteps were closing in, his heavy tread drawing nearer. Leah didn't hesitate. She slipped into the open suite, silently thanking whatever luck or guardian angel had left it unlatched. She eased the door shut behind her, careful not to let the latch click. Her heart thundered as she pressed her back to the door for one breath. And listening. Footfalls and angry muttering passed by in the corridor, just seconds away. Leah surveyed her surroundings in a blur. It was a large, dimly lit suite, plush cream carpet under her feet, elegant furniture, the faint scent of citrus and fresh linen in the air. The cleaning staff had likely just turned down the room. A few lamps glowed softly, but otherwise it was still and quiet. No time to think, no time to wonder whose room this was. She needed to hide now. A pair of wooden double doors stood on the opposite wall, one of them slightly ajar, revealing darkness inside. A closet. Perfect. Without a sound, Leah darted across the suite's living area and slipped through the closet door. It was a walk-in, spacious enough that she could shrink into a back corner behind rows of hanging clothes and thick hotel robes. She pulled the door nearly closed, leaving just a crack, enough to peer through and breathe the cooler air of the suite outside. The closet smelled of cedar and expensive fabric. Leah forced herself to quiet her panting breaths. She braced a hand over her mouth to smother the sound of her own panic. Inside her chest, her heart felt like a wild animal battering against a cage. "Please, please," she begged wordlessly, curling in on herself. "Don't find me. Don't find me." Outside in the hallway, she heard the faint ding of the elevator arriving on this floor. A moment later, Brandon's voice rang out again, closer than before, and dripping with violent fury. "Oh, Leah, you know I'll find you," he shouted. "You can't run from me. There's nowhere to go." His tone sent ice through her veins. Leah bit down on her knuckles, tears welling in her eyes. Every muscle in her body was trembling. He's right outside. If he opened the door, if he came in, this stranger's closet could turn into her coffin, but she'd made her choice. She'd rather risk anything than go back to Brandon's grip. "I feel safer hiding in a stranger's closet," she realized with a grim clarity, "than I ever felt in Brandon's arms." Her eyes burned with tears of fear and furious heartbreak. How had it come to this? How had the man who once professed to love her hunted her like an animal? A surge of resolve cut through the terror. "I'd rather die here in the dark than ever go back to him." Leah pressed herself tighter against the wall of the closet, jaws clenched to keep from sobbing aloud. "Do whatever you want to me, Brandon," she thought bitterly, "but I will never make it easy for you again." The sound of footsteps in the suite's hallway jolted her from her silent vow. Brandon's heavy tread had slowed. He's checking each door. Leah's stomach twisted. There were only a handful of suites on this level. Would he notice that this one door didn't shut properly? She cursed herself for not having the time or presence of mind to close it completely. It was too late now. Through the sliver of the closet door, Leah caught a distorted view of the entrance area to the suite. The door was open only a few inches. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Perhaps Brandon was pausing right outside, listening for any sign of her. Her lungs burned as she tried not to breathe. "Don't hear me. Don't hear me." Suddenly, Brandon's footsteps halted, and she heard the faint creak of the suite door being pushed open a bit more. Leah's heart stopped. "He's here," before she could even process her next thought. Another sound cut through the silence, the measured click of approaching shoes. A confident stride distinct from Brandon's heavy boots. This new arrival walked with calm purpose. Leah's breath hitched. "Someone's coming." "Excuse me," a deep voice spoke from just beyond the suite door. "Can I help you with something?" The voice was male, smooth and polite, but edged with an unmistakable authority. Leah, peering through the tiny crack, could only make out a tall silhouette in the hallway light. Whoever he was, he had just caught Brandon skulking at the threshold. Brandon, caught off guard, didn't respond for a beat. Leah's mind whirled. A hotel guest? If so, maybe Brandon would back off. He hated looking bad in front of others. "Please," she prayed silently. "Let him leave." When Brandon answered, his tone had transformed. Gone was the raw anger. In its place came that oily, performative charm he could turn on at will. "Oh, sorry, sir," he lied smoothly, adopting a concerned facade. "Didn't mean to disturb anyone. I'm actually looking for someone. My fiancé. We had a little lover's spat, and she ran off. I think she may have come down this way. I'm worried about her. She's upset and not thinking straight." Leah's stomach churned. Even now, Brandon was spinning his web of deceit. Fiancé, he insisted on using that word, as if saying it made it true. Never mind that Leah had repeatedly refused to set a wedding date, especially as his behavior grew frightening, and calling their nightmare of a relationship a misunderstanding was a vile joke. How casually he could mask months of abuse, blackmail, and terror as a mere lover's quarrel. The stranger in the hall didn't reply immediately. Through the crack, Leah saw the tall shadow shift slightly. Was he buying Brandon's act? Her nails bit into her palms. Brandon could be incredibly convincing to outsiders. She knew that all too well. If this man let him come in, silence hung thick in the air. Leah held her breath, afraid even a gasp might give her away. She could just make out part of the stranger's profile now. Broad shoulders and a dark jacket or coat, a strong stance that somehow radiated confidence and danger even in stillness. When the man finally spoke, his tone remained cool. "I'm afraid you won't find her in my suite," he said. Each word was measured, polite on the surface yet underlined by steel. "And it sounds like she doesn't particularly want to be found." Leah's heart fluttered. He was protecting her, at least verbally. Inside the closet, she risked inching forward just enough to catch another sliver of the scene. She could see Brandon now, half-turned toward the open door, his back stiff with irritation, despite the smile he no doubt plastered on his face. And she saw him, the stranger defending the doorway. He was taller than Brandon by a good margin, and even in the dim hall light, Leah could see he was impeccably dressed. The cut of a charcoal suit framed an imposing athletic build. She caught the faintest glint of an expensive watch on his wrist as he braced one hand against the doorframe, silently refusing to let Brandon barge past. Brandon let out a forced chuckle, the sound high and brittle. Leah knew that laugh. It was the one he used to feign good humor when his patience was wearing thin. "I understand how this looks," he said, striving to maintain his charade. "But really, I'm worried about her. She's not well, mentally. If you'd allow me to just take a quick look around, I promise I won't disturb anything." "I just need to make sure she's safe." Leah's nails dug harder into her palms until it almost drew blood. "You liar!" she screamed internally. Mentally unstable? The sheer gall made her nearly shake with anger. LT hurt because some small part of her had feared that exact smear, that Brandon would convince the world she was crazy. He had seeded those doubts for months, gaslighting her until she questioned her own sanity, and now he was weaponizing that lie for anyone who would listen. The stranger's silhouette didn't move from the doorway when he spoke again, and the pleasant veneer dropped from his voice, revealing an edge as sharp and cold as a honed blade. "No," he said flatly, "that's not happening. I don't care who you think you are. You have no idea who you're talking to." Brandon interrupted, his false geniality finally cracking. Leah winced at the venom creeping into his tone. Brandon's temper was boiling over. "Do you know who I am? My father practically owns half the city. He's on the hotel board. If my fiancée came through here, I have every right to come in and get her." Leah's breath caught. Typical Brandon, throwing around his family name and influence. And unfortunately, it often worked. City officials, club owners. Even cops tended to give Brandon a wide berth once they realized he was the son of wealthy, connected parents. How would this mysterious stranger react? Reasonable people might flinch at the prospect of offending the powerful Scott family, but the man at the door gave a low, unimpressed grunt. "I don't give a damn about your father," he said, utterly unfazed. "And as far as I'm concerned, no one invited you into my room." Brandon's patience evaporated. Leah could hear it, the raw rage bleeding back into his voice. "Look, you," he snarled, and suddenly his silhouette lunged forward as he tried to shoulder past the taller man. It happened almost too fast for Leah's eyes to track. The stranger moved with lethal speed, blocking Brandon's attempt to enter. A large hand fisted in the front of Brandon's coat, and with a burst of strength, whirled him around and slammed him hard against the hallway wall. The thud reverberated into the suite. Brandon let out a stunned, pained grunt. Leah's eyes widened. She pressed her face to the crack in the closet door, barely daring to believe what she'd just seen. That elegant, composed stranger had just manhandled Brandon like he was nothing. She could only see part of the stranger's profile now. His jaw was tight with anger, lips curled in a disdainful snarl. "Listen carefully," the stranger said, voice low and deadly calm. "There is no one in here for you. You will leave, now, or I'll have hotel security escort you out in pieces." A shiver coursed through Leah, and not from fear of the stranger. His words were brutal, but for the first time in ages, they weren't directed at her. Someone was standing between her and Brandon's wrath, and doing so with terrifying confidence. Brandon wheezed, pushing feebly at the iron grip pinning him. When he spoke, his voice was a hiss of pure hate. "You have no idea who you're threatening. I will ruin you. People like me, we can make people disappear." The stranger shifted his stance, something subtle that made Brandon's tirade falter. Leah's breath caught as the man's arm pressed more firmly against Brandon's chest, and in his other hand. Was that a gun? Her angle was limited, but she glimpsed a dark shape tucked low at the stranger's side, catching the hall's light. Yes, he had drawn a pistol and held it calmly at his hip, pointed in Brandon's general direction. He wasn't overtly aiming it, but he made sure Brandon saw it. Brandon saw. His rant died in his throat. Even from the closet, Leah could imagine the look on his face, how the color would drain, the brief flicker of fear in his eyes. Brandon might bully and threaten, but he was ultimately a coward at the prospect of real physical harm. She heard him swallow. "All right, fine," Brandon spat, trying to gather the remains of his pride. The stranger stepped back, releasing his hold but still blocking the suite door and keeping that gun casually visible. Brandon straightened his coat with a trembling hand. He attempted a sneer, but it didn't quite mask the tremor in his voice. "I'm going. But if you see a young woman around, her name's Leah," he called out more loudly, as if making a scene might salvage his ego. "She's not well. Do the right thing and call me or the police. I'm the only one who can help her." Inside the closet, Leah shut her eyes, bile rising in her throat. Even on the back foot, Brandon couldn't resist trying to poison the well. He wanted anyone who heard him to suspect she was crazy, dangerous, less credible. Hot tears of frustration pricked behind her eyelids. She pressed a fist to her mouth to keep from screaming back at him. "Get out," the stranger said icily. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. There was a command in his tone that even Brandon, in his rage, seemed to heed. There was a tense beat, and then Leah heard Brandon's footsteps retreating at last. The distant elevator dinged again. He was gone. Relief crashed over her in a dizzying wave. Leah went limp, her back sliding a fraction down the wall of the closet as she fought the sudden urge to sob uncontrollably. She bit down on her hand until the urge passed. Don't collapse yet. Not yet. Brandon was gone, but she wasn't safe yet. She was in some stranger's hotel room, a stranger who apparently carried a gun and handled men like Brandon as if swatting flies. For all she knew, she'd traded one danger for another. Out in the suite, the tall man exhaled a low breath. Through tear-blurred eyes, Leah watched his silhouette step back into the room and shut the door firmly. Her heart stuttered. Was he coming in here now? Would he notice something was off? The closet door was nearly closed. Perhaps he wouldn't even think to check it. Perhaps he would assume Brandon had been alone. She heard a soft click as the stranger engaged the deadbolt on the main door and threw the security chain for good measure. He was securing the room. Then he did something that made Leah tense all over again. He spoke, seemingly to himself, in a low mutter too distant for her to catch. After a second, she realized he wasn't muttering at all, but speaking to someone quietly. A phone call? Leah held her breath and strained to listen. She could only make out a few words in the ensuing seconds. A deep, measured murmur. "Keep an eye on him. Brandon Scott, not far." The rest was too soft to discern. But one thing was certain. The stranger knew Brandon's name, and not just his first name. His last name, too. Her blood ran cold. How could he know that? Brandon hadn't introduced himself. Had this man recognized him on sight? Brandon's father is prominent, she reasoned. Maybe the Scott's pictures are often in the society pages. But something about the way the man spoke, calmly issuing instructions like a man used to being obeyed, made her stomach flip. Who was he? The call ended. Leah heard the faint clack as he set a phone down on a table. The suite fell into silence once more, broken only by the patter of rain against the balcony doors and Leah's own thudding heartbeat in her ears. She remained curled in the closet corner, uncertain what to do. Her body was starting to shake violently now. Reaction setting in. She clenched her teeth to keep them from chattering. Maybe she could just stay hidden until this man went to sleep or stepped out and then sneak away. But what if he opened the closet before then? And would Brandon really stay gone? He might linger in the hotel lobby or parking lot. If she left this room alone, he might grab her the second she emerged. The thought made her shudder. Leah's fingers closed around a thick wooden hanger by her shoulder. It wasn't much, but it was the only weapon within reach. She listened hard for the stranger's movements. They were slow, soft, coming closer. A floorboard creaked just outside the closet door. Suddenly, a subtle change in light told her he was right there. Leah swallowed a gasp and shrank further into the clothing, gripping the hanger with sweaty palms. Through the narrow crack, she saw an eye, piercing gray, fixed directly on the closet. He must have caught the glint of her eyes or a hint of motion in here. He knows. Time froze for a heartbeat. Leah's thoughts spun. Should she burst out swinging? Stay silent? She felt like a mouse trapped by a cat's unblinking stare. In 2 long strides, the door was yanked wide open. Bright lamplight flooded the closet, revealing her completely. Leah couldn't hold back a yelp of pure fright. She lurched backward, pressing into the corner, one arm coming up reflexively to cover her face, while the other brandished the hanger defensively in front of her. For a breathless moment, neither of them moved. Leah blinked against the sudden light, her eyes locking onto the man who towered in the closet doorway. Oh. He was young, perhaps early 30s, and devastatingly intense. Tall and powerfully built, he nearly filled the closet's entrance. In the full light, she could see his features clearly. Strong, defined angles. Raven black hair perfectly in place except for one stray lock that fell across his forehead. His stance was coiled, ready, but what held her were those eyes, a stormy gray that seemed to pin her in place. They swept over her in astonishment, widening a fraction at the sight of a shaking woman huddled on his closet floor wielding a hanger. They stared at each other, equally shocked. Leah's mind was blank, mouth dry. She must have made a pitiful sight, drenched clothes clinging to her small frame, mascara-laced tears on her cheeks, clutching a hanger like it was a sword. She was trembling so badly the metal hook clattered against the doorframe. The stranger recovered first. His expression shifted from surprise to something unreadable. Guarded, stern, but not enraged. Up close, he was even more imposing, and yet Leah noted the slight softening in his granite-like face as he took in her condition. His gaze flickered to the bruise on her cheekbone, and she saw a muscle in his jaw tighten. "Who are you?" he asked quietly, breaking the silence. "And why?" he continued in that same even tone. "Are you in my closet?" His voice was deep and level, with the faintest trace of an accent curling around the R's. Under other circumstances, that might have fascinated her. Italian, perhaps? But right now, all Leah could register was that he hadn't lunged forward or dragged her out. Yet. He was simply standing there, blocking the exit, awaiting her answer. Leah's throat worked, but at first no sound came out. Fear and adrenaline had robbed her of speech. "Say something," her mind screamed. If she didn't explain, he might very well think she was a burglar or some crazy person. He still held a gun loosely at his side. She prayed he wouldn't raise it. I'm sorry," she finally choked out, voice barely above a whisper. The words quavered as she tried to force them through trembling lips. "I didn't mean to. I needed to hide." Her explanation sounded so inadequate. Leah cringed and braced herself, expecting anger, suspicion, maybe even violence. She'd basically trespassed into this man's room. For all she knew, he could have her arrested or hurt her himself. After all, what kind of ordinary hotel guest pulls a gun and handles someone like Brandon with such cold ease? He could be dangerous too, a small voice in her head warned. Maybe I escaped one monster only to corner myself with another. The man's steely eyes studied her face. Leah felt exposed under that assessing gaze, as if he could read every bruise, every tear, and piece together the story without her even speaking. Something in her words, or perhaps her expression, must have convinced him, because he released a slow exhale. "Hiding," he repeated softly, more to himself than to her. Then, in a tone that was oddly gentle, he asked, "From that man out there? The one shouting, 'Brandon, is it?'" Leah's breath caught. He had caught Brandon's name, presumably from his yelling. She gave a shaky nod, lowering the wooden hanger a few inches. Yes," she whispered. "Brandon." Her voice broke on his name. Saying it aloud, affirming that yes, the man outside was the one hurting her, sent a fresh wave of emotion through her. Embarrassment, relief, terror, all tangled together. Her knees drew up involuntarily, a flinch of remembered pain as she tried to make herself smaller. He was hurting me. The stranger's face darkened, jaw clenching. Leah instinctively shrank back, but she realized the flash of anger in his eyes wasn't directed at her. It was at Brandon. In that brief silence, she heard the rain intensify outside, drumming on the balcony beyond. Her own ragged breathing seemed loud. She lowered her hand slightly, no longer quite as fearful that he'd strike her. If he was angry on her behalf, he stepped back one pace, no longer looming directly in the doorway. The slight easing of his posture made it easier for Leah to draw a full breath. With a curt nod of his head toward the main room, he said, "Come out of there." It was an instruction, firm but not unkind. Leah hesitated. Her legs were stiff from crouching and shaking from adrenaline. She wasn't sure she could stand steadily. After everything, her body was near collapse. But she also didn't want to disobey this man who, so far, had been her unwitting savior. Clutching the doorframe for support, Leah slowly uncurled herself from the closet floor and stepped forward. Her legs immediately buckled. In a blink, the stranger closed the short distance between them. A strong arm caught her around the waist, while his other hand grasped her arm to steady her. Leah flinched at the sudden contact, instinct bracing for pain, but the grip was secure and careful, not rough. He held her upright until her knees locked and she found her balance. "Easy," he murmured. "I've got you. I'm not going to hurt you." Those last words broke through Leah's haze of panic. "I'm not going to hurt you." The gentle assurance in his tone, coming from such a formidable-looking man, made fresh tears sting her eyes. How long had it been since she'd heard those words from anyone? Certainly not from Brandon. Brandon always claimed he'd never hurt her right before he did something awful. But this stranger's voice had genuine kindness beneath the gruffness. Leah managed to nod, a tiny dip of her chin, indicating she understood. Her whole world narrowed to the sensation of his hands supporting her. His touch was warm, surprisingly steady despite the intensity he'd shown moments ago. Up close, she noticed something unexpected. Though his face was all hard angles and stern lines, there was a faint dimple in his left cheek and subtle crinkles at the corners of his eyes, softer details that hinted the man behind the menace wasn't made of stone after all. "Thank you," she whispered, not even sure if the words were audible. Her voice was wrecked with exhaustion and emotion. She allowed him to guide her out of the closet fully. The hanger slipped from her numb fingers, clattering to the floor, but neither of them paid it any mind. Outside the closet, the suite's bedroom came into view. It was lavish, more an upscale apartment than a hotel room, with a king-size bed, sitting area, and a crystal chandelier casting a warm glow. She realized now that she must be in one of the hotel's executive suites, the kind meant for VIPs. The stranger certainly carried himself like someone accustomed to the best. He led her a few steps and eased her down onto the foot of the bed. Leah sat, pulling the damp hem of her coat tightly around herself. She suddenly became very aware of her appearance, the soaked skirt clinging to her thighs, her ruined blouse, her hair straggling in wet tendrils. With trembling hands, she brushed her hair back from her face, wincing as her fingertips accidentally grazed the bruise on her cheek. The man watched her in silence for a moment. Now that they weren't grappling in a closet or at gunpoint, Leah felt a flush of bashfulness cut through her fear. What must he think of her? An intruder? A lunatic? She dared a glance up at him through her lashes. He was still standing close, his imposing frame between her and the locked door, though she suspected that was more habit than a conscious effort to corner her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, they were fixed on her cheek, on the bruise. A flicker of something, anger, pity, crossed his expression. Leah's lip quivered. She ducked her head, mortified that he was seeing her in such a state. "I'm sorry," she whispered for what felt like the 100th time. Her default reflex, apologize, appease, was hard to shake, even now. I shouldn't have snuck in. I had nowhere else to go." Her voice broke on the last word, and to her horror a sob welled up. She clapped a hand over her mouth, squeezing her eyes shut as tears threatened. Get it together. He was crouching in front of her before she realized it, one knee on the carpet so he could look her in the eye. "Stop apologizing," he said, not unkindly. The low timbre of his voice drew her gaze to his. Up close, those gray eyes were steady and surprisingly gentle. "You're safe here, understand? Safe." Leah almost didn't recognize the concept, but something about the certainty in his tone made her want to believe him. She inhaled shakily, trying to calm herself. The room was growing hazy at the edges of her vision. She was so exhausted she could hardly sit upright. The man's brow furrowed as he studied her closer. Now that she wasn't actively panicking, Leah could see the toll the night had taken on him as well. Faint lines of strain around his eyes, perhaps from adrenaline ebbing. One lock of his dark hair had fallen loose in the earlier scuffle, giving him a rakish, slightly softer look that contrasted with his otherwise immaculate appearance. There was a tiny rip at the shoulder seam of his suit jacket, likely courtesy of Brandon's struggling, a testament to how strong a grip he'd used. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Leah," she said, voice still trembling. "Leah Williams." It felt oddly foreign giving her last name. She hadn't used it much since Brandon pushed her to use his last name socially during their engagement. Saying Williams again reminded her who she used to be, a person independent of him. "Leah," the man repeated as if testing it. He gave a slight nod. "I'm Dante." There was a subtle hesitation before he offered his name, as though he deliberately omitted something. Perhaps a last name. Dante. It suited him, she thought faintly. Strong, a little old world, commanding. He stood up from his crouch, seemingly satisfied that she wasn't about to faint. As he rose, he extended a hand briefly as if to shake hers, then seemed to think better of it given her condition. Instead, he gave a polite incline of his head. It was almost gentlemanly, despite everything. Leah swallowed and mustered her strength to speak more clearly. "Thank you, Dante, for what you did. You didn't have to—" Her voice faltered as memories of what could have happened if he hadn't intervened flooded her mind. Brandon cornering her, dragging her out by her hair, maybe worse, a visible shiver ran through her. "I owe you," she managed, her hands twisting together in her lap to hide their shaking. Dante's dark brows knitted together. "You don't owe me anything," he said firmly. "I wasn't about to stand by and let that man harm you, especially not outside my own door." A ghost of wryness touched his lips, though I admit I wasn't expecting to find you inside my closet afterward. A weak, startled laugh puffed out of Leah, half sob, half genuine amusement at the absurdity. Color crept into her cheeks. "I truly am sorry for intruding," she said quickly. "I panicked when I saw the door open and—" He lifted a hand slightly, and she cut off. Fearing for a second he was annoyed, but he simply shook his head. "It's all right. You did what you had to do to get away. Given the circumstances, I'm glad you found your way in here." His gaze flicked again to the bruise on her face. "No one should treat you the way he did. I only did what anyone ought to." Leah's chest tightened at that simple statement. "Not anyone," she whispered bitterly. "Others saw things no one ever stepped in before." Her mind flashed to her apartment neighbors who turned away, the coworkers who pretended not to notice her hidden bruises when Brandon gripped her too hard. People often chose not to get involved. The fact that Dante had done so, decisively, meant more than he could know. Dante's gray eyes flashed with a glint of anger, but he bit back whatever response had risen and instead reached into his suit jacket pocket. Leah tensed reflexively until she saw that what he withdrew was not a weapon, but a neatly folded white handkerchief. He held it out to her. It took her a moment to realize tears were still spilling silently down her face. Oh, she accepted the handkerchief with a shaking hand. It was absurdly clean and soft, probably expensive. Thank you." Gently, she dabbed at her cheeks, mortified to see dark mascara stains blotting the pristine cloth. Immediately, she began to fumble. "I'm sorry. I'll clean it and return." "Don't worry about it," he interrupted softly. He straightened to his full height. Standing over her, he seemed to remember the gun in his hand. With a smooth motion, and he clicked the safety and placed it out of sight in a drawer of the nearby nightstand. Leah flinched slightly at the casual way he handled the firearm, evidence that he was very comfortable with it. Her eyes stayed fixed on that drawer even after it shut, a faint tremor running through her. Noticing, Dante took a step back to give her space. "Wait here a moment," he said. Leah nodded mutely. Where would she even go? Her body felt glued to the bed by sheer exhaustion. Dante disappeared through a door on the other side of the bedroom that she assumed led to the bathroom. A second later, she heard water running. Left alone, Leah took stock of her situation. It was just now truly sinking in. Brandon is gone. For now, at least. She was sitting in a luxurious hotel room with a stranger who had, in the span of minutes, done more to defend her than anyone ever had. But at the same time, who on earth was this Dante? Her eyes roamed the suite as she tried to distract herself from the adrenaline crash shaking her limbs. On the nightstand, a digital clock glowed, 12:47 a.m., nearly 1 in the morning. The room bore signs of someone in the middle of using it. A sleek black suitcase stood open on a luggage rack with neatly folded clothes inside, an uncorked bottle of wine, and 2 glasses on the coffee table in the sitting area. 1 glass used, she noted. A navy sport coat hung over the back of a chair, and beside it on the table lay what looked like a smartphone and keycard. He must have arrived not long before she barged in, and perhaps he had stepped out briefly and left the door ajar for housekeeping, which allowed her entry. Her gaze drifted to the partially open drawer where Dante had stowed his gun. Something else was in there. She could see the corner of a leather-bound book or folder peeking out. She recalled what she'd overheard him say on the phone. Brandon Scott. Had he known of Brandon already? It seemed unlikely unless Brandon's family name meant something to him. A strange thought struck her. What if Dante was the reason Brandon had been here at this hotel tonight? Could it be a coincidence? Don't spin wild theories, she chided herself. She was groggy and traumatized. She could puzzle over connections later. Right now, she had more immediate concerns, like what would happen next. Would Dante kick her out now that the immediate danger had passed? Would he call the police after all? The thought made her stomach lurch. In principle, reporting Brandon was the right thing to do, but Leah's experience screamed that it could backfire terribly. Brandon's father had money and influence to muddy any waters. He had legal connections too, and Brandon himself was cunning. He left minimal marks on her body where anyone official might see, and he collected leverage. The mere memory made her throat close. He still had that over her. The secret he lorded to keep her in line. Her breath became shallow. If Dante called the police, Brandon would spin the situation, maybe use that secret to paint her as the villain. He might already be working that angle. He'd basically told Dante she was unstable. If police hauled her in now, would they believe her, or the son of a wealthy philanthropist who claimed to be rescuing his disturbed fiancé? A whimper escaped her unbidden. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to will away the encroaching panic. She couldn't let that happen. The water in the bathroom shut off, and a moment later Dante emerged, rolling up his shirt sleeves. He carried a glass of water and a small white washcloth. "Drink," he urged gently, handing her the water first. Leah hadn't realized how raw her throat felt until the cool glass touched her fingers. She obeyed, taking a few slow sips. Each gulp soothed the dryness in her throat and helped ground her a little more in reality. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice steadier. Dante nodded curtly, then held out the damp washcloth. "For your face," he explained. Leah took it and carefully wiped at her cheeks and eyes, cleaning away the smeared mascara and tear stains. The cloth came away black and she grimaced. She must look like an absolute wreck, but at least the cool water felt refreshing against her feverish skin. "Better?" he asked. He had pulled a low upholstered stool over to sit in front of her, giving them nearly eye-level proximity now. It was strange. Brandon always loomed over her when she was vulnerable, using his height to intimidate. Dante, on the other hand, had intentionally lowered himself, making his presence less imposing. The realization made Leah's guarded stance relax by a notch. "Yes, thank you," she said softly. She still clutched the washcloth, unsure what to do with it now. He seemed to sense her lingering apprehension. After a pause, he spoke gently. "Leah, I'm not going to call the police right this moment, if that's what you're worried about." Her eyes snapped to his, startled that he'd read her mind so plainly. A flush of embarrassment warmed her cheeks. Was she that transparent? She opened her mouth, struggling to articulate her concerns without sounding ungrateful. "It's just, he has friends, connections," she said haltingly. "If the police get involved, it could get worse." Dante's expression darkened, but again she felt the anger wasn't aimed at her. He leaned forward slightly, forearms braced on his knees. "Worse? That man chased and assaulted you," he said, voice icy at the recollection. "The police could—" "He'll slip away," Leah interrupted, her voice suddenly firm with bitter knowledge. "He always does. His family hires lawyers, calls in favors, and he never leaves evidence that's obvious." She gestured to her cheek, then tugged her sleeve up to show her forearm. Already, faint fingerprints of a bruise were forming where Brandon had grabbed her earlier that night. They'd be fully purple by morning. "He's careful," she continued, swallowing the sour taste in her mouth. "He makes sure any marks can be hidden under clothes or explained away. And if I try to tell—" her throat closed on the rest. "He'll release the video." She wasn't ready to say that part yet, not to someone she'd just met. It was too humiliating. Dante considered her words. A storm brewed in his gray eyes, but she could tell he understood. "Money and influence," he said quietly. "Likely a trust fund brat coasting on daddy's power. That explains his arrogance and his ability to dodge consequences." Leah blinked. The contempt dripping from Dante's tone was unmistakable. If he had any doubt about Brandon's villainy, it seemed gone now. "Yes," she agreed, letting out a shaky sigh. "Exactly." His lips pressed into a thin line. When he spoke again, his voice had lost that dangerous edge, turning soft with concern. "How long has this been going on?" Leah glanced down at her hands. The truth was a knot of shame in her stomach. "Too long," she whispered. "Months. We were together almost 2 years, engaged for 1. But the last 6 months were the worst." She hesitated, then added in a rush. "I tried to leave before. Every time I tried, he did something, or threatened something to make me stay." Dante's jaw tightened. "Threatened what?" he asked, carefully controlled. Leah felt her cheeks flame with humiliation. She didn't want to explain. She didn't want this stranger, the first person to show her genuine kindness in ages, to know the full extent of her humiliation. But he was looking at her with such earnest concern, and a part of her desperately wanted to unload the weight she'd been carrying alone. Her voice barely above a whisper, she admitted. He has something on me, a video of me." Fresh tears pooled in her eyes, and she angrily blinked them away. And he threatened to use it to ruin me. Socially, legally, every way. He said if I didn't do what he wanted, he'd send it to everyone. The police, my friends, the press. Paint me as as some awful person. She choked back a sob, wrapping her arms around herself. It was the first time she'd ever spoken aloud of the video to anyone. Even her best friend knew only that Brandon had leverage on her, not what it was. Her skin crawled as she remembered that night, the haze of whatever he'd slipped in her drink, the feel of unwanted hands on her, the flash of a camera, and later, Brandon's triumphant face showing her a damningly edited piece of footage. Dante had gone very still. Leah dared a glance at him. His eyes were fixed on her, and in what she saw in them made her breath catch. Rage, righteous, furious rage, not at her, but on her behalf. It swirled in his storm-gray irises like thunderclouds, yet his voice, when he spoke, remained calm and measured. "He blackmailed you into staying," Dante stated. It wasn't even a question at this point. Leah nodded, a tear finally spilling over despite her efforts. "I'm not proud of what's in that video," she said brokenly. "It was a mistake, one he set me up for, but still..." She bit down on her lip hard, unable to continue. If Dante asked for details, if he looked at her with disgust, like she sometimes looked at herself, she wasn't sure she could bear it. But Dante didn't ask. A low curse slipped from him, something Italian and vicious, as he scrubbed a hand over his face, his other hand clenched into a fist on his knee. Leah flinched slightly at the sudden movement, a reflex born of too many unpredictable moods from Brandon. Immediately, Dante noticed and reined himself in. He took a slow breath and unclenched his hand. In the heavy silence, Leah's heart hammered. "This is it," she thought anxiously. "Now he knows I'm tainted." Part of her expected him to distance himself, perhaps politely usher her out or show pitying revulsion. Why wouldn't he? She'd basically admitted someone had compromising material on her. Often people responded with doubt or disdain. What did you do to provoke it? Why did you let it happen? She braced herself for that judgment in his eyes. Instead, Dante reached out slowly and, to her utter surprise, gently covered her trembling hands with his. The gesture was tentative, as if he wasn't sure she'd accept the touch. His skin was warm, his large hands nearly enveloping her smaller ones. Leah found herself staring at their hands in astonishment. The last time a man's hand had been on hers, it was Brandon crushing her fingers in rage, but Dante's touch was careful, protective. He waited until she lifted her teary gaze to meet his. When she did, she found his expression had shifted into something resolute, a fierce tenderness that took her breath away. "That man," Dante said, each word vibrating with quiet fury, "is going to regret ever laying a hand on you or causing you a moment of pain." His grip on her hands tightened, not painfully but firmly, anchoring her attention. "Listen to me, Leah. I promise you, he will never hurt you again." Leah's breath caught on a soft gasp. Promise. It had been so long since anyone had promised her anything good. Certainly no one had ever promised to protect her. Not like this, with absolute conviction burning behind each syllable. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. A sob climbed up her throat and escaped as a strangled squeak. She ducked her head, trying to hide how desperately those words affected her, but he saw. Of course he saw. Dante released one of her hands, and instead lifted it to her chin, tilting her face up gently. Leah's instinct was to flinch. Brandon often grabbed her chin to force eye contact in a fight. But Dante's touch was nothing like that. His thumb just barely brushed her jaw, and the gesture was so unexpectedly tender that it undid the last of her composure. A tear slid down her cheek. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said, softly but intensely. "I know you barely know me, but you have my word. I'm going to keep you safe." Leah stared at him, lips parted in astonishment. Something about the steadiness of his gaze, the utter certainty in his tone. For the first time in recent memory, she felt a spark of hope. It was terrifying. Hope always was, because if it proved false, it would break her completely. But Dante's vow felt different. It resonated down to her very bones. He might actually mean it. She struggled to form a reply. Why would he do this? He didn't even know her. Was it simply basic decency, the way any bystander should act? It felt like more, and though a large part of her whispered to be careful, after all, who was Dante? Why did he have a gun, or the ability to face down a man like Brandon without flinching? Her gut, perhaps battered into better judgment by trauma, told her she could trust him, at least for now. "You don't have to get involved," she managed weakly, even as her fingers curled to lightly grasp the hand he still held against her face. This isn't your fight. You've already done so much. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. She knew firsthand how vindictive Brandon could be. If Dante somehow became a target of Brandon's wrath by helping her, she couldn't bear that guilt. Dante's expression softened a fraction when he felt her return a faint pressure to his hand. It became my fight, he said quietly, the moment you stepped into my room. He paused, as if weighing just how much to say. When he continued, his voice was calm, but laced with an undercurrent of personal passion. Let's just say I have zero tolerance for men who prey on those weaker than themselves, and I have personal reasons to hate men who hurt women. His eyes flickered with the shadow of something, old pain maybe, before clearing as he focused on her again. Helping you isn't a burden, Leah. It's something I want to do. Personal reasons. Leah wondered what lay behind that statement. There was a raw note in his voice that hadn't been there before, but before she could even think to ask, Dante moved, his protective hold transitioning back to a more businesslike demeanor. He gently released her and stood, the mattress rising slightly as his weight left the bed's edge. You're exhausted, he stated matter-of-factly. You need rest. Now that he mentioned it, Leah's entire body felt like a limp rag. The adrenaline was long gone, leaving only bone-deep fatigue and throbbing bruises. She hadn't had a proper night's sleep in, she couldn't even recall, certainly not in the past week of planning her escape. And tonight's ordeal had sapped what little reserves she had left. Still, reality intruded. Where will I mean, it's not safe for me to go home, she murmured, dizzied by just how spent she felt. Her limbs were growing heavier by the second as the immediate crisis adrenaline faded. It's not safe for you out there, period, Dante replied firmly. He could still be waiting nearby. You'll stay here tonight. Here, in this suite, with him. Leah's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to protest. Was that appropriate? Was she even safe with this man? But Dante was already moving with purposeful efficiency. He crossed to the door that connected the bedroom to the suite's living area and disappeared through it. She heard the soft thump of him dragging something heavy. When he reappeared, he carried an extra pillow and a neatly folded blanket. He walked past her to the long velvet sofa in the sitting area adjacent to the bedroom and tossed them onto one end. Then he turned to her, arms crossed in a way that booked no argument. I'll take the couch. You take the bed. Leah stared. The bed in question was enormous and plush, surely far more comfortable than the sofa, his sofa, and he was offering it without a second thought. Dante, I can't take your bed. I'll sleep on the couch or even the floor. Stop, he said, holding up a hand. That single word managed to be gentle and authoritative all at once. You're injured and exhausted. You need a proper rest. Take the bed. A faint, almost teasing glint lit his gray eyes as he added dryly, if it eases your mind, consider that it's the least I can do after barging into your life uninvited. A tiny smile ghosted at the corner of Leah's mouth despite herself. I think technically I barged into your life, via your closet. The surreal humor of that statement hovered between them, and Dante's lips quirked. It was the barest hint of a smile, but it humanized his stern face remarkably. Leah realized she rather liked the look of it. Fair enough, he conceded softly. Regardless, the arrangement stands. He nodded toward the bathroom. There's a robe inside and towels. Why don't you dry off? Maybe take a hot shower if you feel up to it. It'll help with the chill. He hesitated, then added, I'll step outside to the living area to give you privacy. Take your time. For a moment, Leah simply looked at him. Dante had effortlessly taken control of the situation, but not in an overbearing way, more in the manner of someone used to handling crises and caring for others. It felt strange to be on the receiving end of such consideration. Brandon's controlling behavior had always been about power and dominance, making her smaller. Dante's manner was equally authoritative, yet entirely different in intent. He genuinely seemed concerned with her well-being. The contrast almost made her want to cry again, but she swallowed that urge. All right, she whispered. Thank you. Words continued to fail her when she most wished she had something eloquent to express her gratitude and relief. I will repay this somehow, she vowed internally, and even as she knew Dante claimed she owed him nothing. Dante gave a brisk nod and turned, heading to the suite's other room and closing the double doors behind him to allow her peace. Leah used the edge of the bed to push herself up, legs shaking but holding. With slow steps, she walked into the bathroom. The mirror inside revealed the full extent of her disarray. Her auburn hair hung limp and tangled, dark mascara streaks still shadowed under her red-rimmed eyes, and the bruise on her cheek had deepened from pink to an ugly bluish-purple crescent. Gingerly, Leah touched it and winced. It would take days to fade. She gently closed the bathroom door and turned the shower on, as hot as she could stand. While steam filled the marble-tiled room, she stripped off her wet, torn clothing piece by piece. Each removal revealed more souvenirs of Brandon's abuse, fingertip bruises on her upper arms from where he'd yanked her earlier, a tender spot on her ribs from being shoved into a wall the night before, a line of yellowing bruises on her side from older encounters. Leah frowned at those, anger flaring. He always aimed where they wouldn't easily show. The systematic cruelty of it made her feel ill. Not anymore, she told herself firmly. This ends now. Dante's fierce vow echoed in her head, giving her resolve. Brandon would never hurt her again. Dante had sworn it, and in her heart, she clung to that promise like a lifeline. Stepping under the hot spray of the shower, Leah closed her eyes and allowed the water to wash some of the night's misery from her skin. Bits of leaves and grime from the alley swirled down the drain, along with the last vestiges of her ruined makeup. The heat soothed her aching muscles. She stood there far longer than necessary, replaying the night's events behind her eyelids in disbelief. It still felt unreal, that she'd escaped, that she was under the protection of a stranger with a kind heart and a dangerous aura who appeared out of nowhere like some dark guardian angel. When she could barely remain standing due to fatigue, she shut off the water. True to his word, Dante had left a plush hotel robe hanging on the back of the bathroom door, along with a neatly folded set of fresh towels. Leah dried off and gingerly patted her hair with the towel until it was just damp rather than dripping. Then she pulled on the robe. It was white, thick, and luxuriously soft, embroidered with the hotel's gold emblem. She wrapped it tightly around her, relishing the warmth and comfort that enveloped her battered body. Catching her reflection once more, she noted she looked a bit better, cleaner at least, and the bruise now stood out starkly against her pale skin. Nothing to be done about that. Maybe in the morning she could worry about concealer. If tomorrow came calmly. A sliver of fear tried to wedge back into her mind. What if Brandon doesn't give up? What if he finds a way to reach me even here? Leah took a deep breath and pushed that aside, one step at a time. Cracking the bathroom door open, she peeked out. The bedroom was empty, as promised. She heard a low murmur of Dante's voice from the other side of the suite's double doors, perhaps on another phone call, but she couldn't make out words. Leah quietly crossed the room and slipped into the king-sized bed. The sheets were crisp and cool against her skin, and the mattress cradled her in ways her own cheap bed at home never had. Clean, safe, warm, her body practically melted into the sensation. She hadn't realized how bone-tired she was. Every eyelash felt weighted with lead. There were things to think about, she knew, plans to consider, but as soon as her head met the pillow, a wave of exhaustion overtook her. She was safe for now, a small voice kept whispering. The door was bolted, Brandon was gone, and a protective man was keeping watch outside the room. For the first time in months, Leah felt the knots of constant fear loosening enough to allow true rest. Her eyes fell shut, and within minutes she sank into a deep, dreamless sleep. Dante Moretti listened intently to the voice on the other end of his secure phone, his eyes periodically flicking to the closed bedroom door across the suite. He kept his tone low, not wanting to disturb Leah's hard-won rest. Understood. Keep 2 men on surveillance at the lobby and the parking level, he said quietly. He might still be lurking. If you spot him, do not engage. Just inform me immediately. He paused, lips thinning as he absorbed the response. Luca, his driver and all-purpose right-hand man, confirmed that Brandon had indeed left the hotel premises in a black BMW shortly after their confrontation, tires screeching like a man possessed. The license plate was captured by Dante's people. They could run it later if needed. For now, Brandon Scott was gone, likely off to whatever lair he crawled from. Also, Dante added, find out what you can about the Scott family, particularly Brandon. Any unsavory behavior that's been hushed up. His jaw tightened as he spoke. He suspected tonight's events were just the tip of a very nasty iceberg. Men like Brandon often left trails of victims and cover-ups. Dante intended to uncover every single one if it would help Leah, and bring that bastard to justice one way or another. Luca's voice crackled acknowledgement before Dante ended the call. He tossed the phone onto the couch cushion and pinched the bridge of his nose, allowing himself a long, controlled breath. The adrenaline from earlier was ebbing, leaving behind a mixture of simmering anger and something else. Something oddly tender lodged in his chest. His eyes drifted to the bedroom door again. Leah. He had a name for her now. a name that somehow suited the brave, desperate woman he'd found in his closet. He replayed her last words to him in the bathroom, the raw honesty of her confession about the blackmail. A fresh surge of protectiveness flared within him, strong enough that it almost surprised Dante with its intensity. He tried to analyze it logically. Leia was under his protection now, simply because she needed help and he was in a position to give it. Because he despised creatures like Brandon who preyed on the vulnerable. That aligned with his personal code and, yes, personal history. That alone could explain some of the emotion roiling in him. Memories he'd buried years ago threatened to surface. Of his younger sister sobbing on the floor after her boyfriend had beaten her. Of his mother living in constant fear of his alcoholic father's temper. Dante's fists clenched unconsciously. He had sworn a long time ago that he would never be powerless to stop abusers like them. Not once he had the means to do something. That vow had shaped the course of his life. And tonight, in Leah's wide, terrified eyes, he had seen echoes of those he'd failed to protect in the past. She wasn't his sister or his mother, but she was someone who needed a defender, and fate had placed him in that role. Dante didn't take such responsibility lightly. "I end threats. I don't create them," he had told her. It was a credo that guided him. Brandon Scott was a threat, one he fully intended to end, permanently. Yet, Dante exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. There was more to it than just principle, wasn't there? He couldn't deny the visceral reaction he'd had seeing her in that closet. A petite, drenched woman trembling like a cornered fawn, yet still trying to defend herself with nothing but a hanger and sheer will. The moment her fearful brown eyes met his, something had cracked open in Dante's chest. An urge not only to eliminate the danger, but to comfort, to reassure, to protect her personally, not just out of abstract duty. It was absurd. He didn't know her beyond the scraps of horror he'd gleaned. He hadn't even known her full name until a few minutes ago. Yet watching her now, through the crack in the door as she slept in his bed, Dante felt a curious sense of peace intermingle with his determination. She looked so small under the covers, a tumble of auburn hair fanned on the pillow, her face softened in slumber. The bruise on her cheek stood out sharply. Dante's fingers twitched with the desire to somehow erase it, to erase all of them. He forced himself to look away. Best not tread further down that path. Empathy was one thing. Growing attached was another. He'd help her get free of Brandon and ensure she had her life back. That was the goal. Anything beyond that, Dante wasn't prepared to examine too closely yet. Through the suite's windows, the storm outside intensified. Rain lashed at the glass, and a distant roll of thunder vibrated through the night. Dante took up a silent vigil on the couch, pistol within reach under a pillow, and eyes trained on the front door. If by some foolish chance Brandon tried to return, Dante would be ready. He wasn't sure how much time passed. An hour? 2? When at last he allowed his rigid posture to relax slightly. There'd been no sign of disturbance. Luca's occasional text updates confirmed that Brandon's vehicle was tracked heading out of the city, likely to the Scott estate in the countryside. That made sense. A coward licking his wounds might retreat to Mommy and Daddy's protected mansion. Fine, let him feel safe for now. Morning would bring new plans. Inside the suite, the only sounds were the soft ticking of the decorative clock on the wall and the muffled patter of rain. Dante's gaze slid back to the bedroom. On a whim, he rose and crept to the door, easing it open just enough to peek in. Leah was still deeply asleep, half curled on her side. In slumber, some of the tension had left her face, making her appear younger. The harsh lines of fear and pain smoothed out, leaving a delicate beauty in their wake. Dante felt a faint warmth in his chest at the sight. She's safe now, he reassured himself. I'll make sure it stays that way. He checked that the room's thermostat was turned up adequately. She'd been shivering so badly earlier, he didn't want her to catch a chill. Satisfied the temperature was cozy, he withdrew, pulling the door nearly shut again to not disturb her. As he settled back on the couch, a thought occurred to him that coaxed a quiet sigh from his lips. It struck him that Leah, even in her harrowing situation, had shown remarkable courage. Plenty of people might have frozen or given up when cornered by an abuser like Brandon, but she ran. She fought to escape, using her wits to evade him, the detour through the service corridor, slipping into a stranger's room. That took presence of mind under extreme duress. And even in the closet, terrified and at his mercy, she'd had the boldness to raise a hanger in defense. A wry smile tugged at Dante's mouth. The little fighter. He found himself respecting her immensely, and admiring her, and, if he was honest with himself, aching for her. what she had endured. Dante had seen strong men crumble under similar torment, but Leah hadn't broken. Bent, perhaps, but not broken. There was a core of steel in her, even if she didn't yet realize it. As he drifted into a light, vigilant slumber, Dante's last thought was that tomorrow he would do everything in his power to fortify that steel, help her reclaim herself, free of fear, whatever it takes. He vowed silently, hand on his gun and ears attuned for any threat. Brandon Scott will never touch her again. Sunlight peeked through a gap in the heavy curtains, casting a golden beam right across Leah's face. She stirred, a small frown crinkling her brow as she tried to turn away from the light, but the movement sent a jolt of pain through her body. With a soft groan, Leah's eyes fluttered open. Disorientation flooded her. The ceiling above was ornate and unfamiliar, and the bed under her was sumptuous, not the cheap mattress she was used to. For a split second, panic flared. Where am I? She bolted upright, heart pounding, until the memories of last night crashed back in waves. The chase, the closet, Dante. She registered the lavish hotel bedroom around her, and the faint scent of his cologne on the pillow. Brandon wasn't here. He hadn't found her in the night. She was safe. A shaky exhale slipped from her lips as relief and reality settled in. In the calm light of morning, the events of the previous hours felt almost dreamlike, but the tenderness in her muscles and the sting on her cheek were very real reminders, as was the oversized robe wrapped around her, Dante's robe. Dante. Her heart did a curious little flip remembering his gentle care and fierce promises. Not to mention his sheer presence. A lethal guardian who had swept in and upended the hopeless narrative of her life in one evening. Is he still here? Leah glanced around the bedroom. The double doors to the sitting room were slightly ajar. She could hear the distant clink of dishes and a low rumble of a voice. News on TV, perhaps, or someone speaking. She realized she didn't have her phone, and in any case, Brandon still had it. A pang of worry shot through her. She had to let her best friend Kara know she was all right. Kara would have woken to Leah's empty bed and freaked out if she'd known any of what transpired. Leah had texted Kara vaguely yesterday about planning to leave Brandon, but nothing after. Leah slid out of bed, the plush rug soft under her bare feet. Someone, probably Dante, had left a shopping bag on the armchair by the window. She peered inside and found women's clothes, tags still on. A simple t-shirt, a cozy sweater, jeans, undergarments, even slip-on shoes, all roughly her size. The sight made her chest constrict. He must have arranged these early this morning, anticipating she'd need something to wear. It was an incredibly thoughtful gesture, one she hadn't even considered last night while fleeing with nothing but the clothes on her back, swallowing thickly. Leah changed into the fresh clothes. They fit well enough. The jeans were maybe a tad loose at the waist, but she cinched them with the provided belt. The act of dressing in something clean, and hers, for now, buoyed her spirits. She felt almost human again. The only thing marring her reflection in the vanity mirror was the bruise on her cheekbone. Purple and green edges were already forming. No hiding that without makeup. With a sigh, she smoothed her hair, still slightly damp but much less wild, and left the bedroom. She found Dante in the suite's living area, seated at the dining table, which was now laden with covered silver serving trays. Breakfast, presumably. The aroma of coffee and something buttery filled the air, making her stomach rumble. How long had it been since she'd eaten? She honestly couldn't recall having dinner yesterday in the midst of all the drama. Dante looked up the instant she emerged, his intense gaze softening just a bit when he saw her. He rose from his chair, the morning light catching on his crisp white shirt. He'd changed from last night's attire into a fresh dress shirt, open at the collar, sleeves rolled to his forearms. "Good morning," he greeted quietly. "How are you feeling?" Leah managed a small smile. "Better. I slept like a rock." A hint of shy gratitude colored her tone. "Because of you." She didn't say it, but she suspected he knew. She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept through the night without jolting awake in terror. It must have been sheer exhaustion combined with the fact that, for once, she truly believed someone was keeping watch. And he had. The evidence was in his eyes, slight shadows beneath them. She wondered if he'd slept at all. "Good," Dante replied. He gestured towards the spread on the table. "I took the liberty of ordering some breakfast. Nothing fancy, just something to get your strength up." He paused, almost self-conscious for the first time. "And I had some clothes brought up. I see you found them. I hope they're all right." "They're perfect. Thank you." For everything, Leah said, earnest. She walked over to the table, drawn by the scent of food and the comforting presence of this man who was rapidly becoming her lifeline. As she moved, Dante's eyes subtly swept over her, likely checking that she was indeed all right. She noticed his gaze linger an extra second on her cheek bruise, and his jaw tightened. Wordlessly, he pulled out a chair for her. Leah sat, another flush of appreciation warming her face at the polite gesture. She truly wasn't accustomed to this, being cared for without ulterior motive. It felt almost uncomfortable in its strangeness, but also nice. More than nice, if she was honest. Dante removed the silver lid from one tray, revealing a plate of warm croissants, toast, and an assortment of pastries. Another held scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and in what looked like bacon and sausages. Leah's empty stomach gave an audible, mortifying growl at the sight and smell of all that food. She slapped a hand over her middle, cheeks burning, but Dante only gave a quiet chuckle. "Eat," he urged, taking his own seat beside her, not opposite her. Curiously, he chose the seat just to her right, a subtle positioning that kept him between her and the door. "Please, you need it." Leah didn't need further encouragement. Realizing just how ravenous she was, she tentatively reached for a croissant. It was flaky and still warm, likely delivered just minutes ago. She tore off a piece and nibbled, a blissful sigh escaping as the buttery pastry practically melted on her tongue. Goodness. When had food last tasted this good? The two of them ate mostly in silence for a few minutes. Dante poured her a cup of coffee, fixed exactly as she would normally take it, black with a pinch of sugar. She noticed he watched how she sipped it yesterday and remembered, or maybe it was a lucky guess. He also poured orange juice and encouraged her to have both for hydration. Leah alternated between savory and sweet, fruit and pastry, until her initial pangs of hunger subsided and she felt pleasantly full and far more energized. As she polished off a strawberry, Leah found herself glancing surreptitiously at Dante. In the daylight, he was no less striking. If anything, the morning sun accentuated the chiseled planes of his face, the slight blue-black shadow of stubble on his jaw that he hadn't had time to shave. He looked tired, she realized. There was a heaviness around his eyes despite his composed demeanor. "He stayed up to keep you safe," an inner voice whispered. "Did you get any sleep?" she asked softly, breaking the quiet. Dante met her gaze over the rim of his coffee cup. "I rested enough," he replied. "Don't worry about me." Too late, she was worrying. "I am sorry," Leah said, lowering her fork. "You shouldn't have had to." He set his cup down with a gentle thud and fixed her with a look. "Leah, I told you to stop apologizing," he said, but his tone held a note of almost teasing exasperation this time instead of reprimand. "I made a choice. I'm fine." Heat crept to Leah's cheeks. She toyed with a crumb on her plate. "It's just hard for me not to feel like a burden," she admitted quietly. "I know you keep saying I'm not, but..." "You're not," Dante interrupted. Then, more softly, "If anything, I'm glad I was there. Imagine if someone else had this sweet last night, someone without a conscience, or if you hadn't found an open door at all." He trailed off, the implication clear. Neither of them wanted to imagine what would have happened if Brandon had caught her. Leah shivered involuntarily. Dante's hand twitched as if he considered reaching out to reassure her again, but he instead curled it around his coffee mug. After a moment he spoke, voice carefully neutral. "What are you thinking right now?" Leah drew a long breath. What was she thinking? That question had so many possible answers. "I'm thinking I might actually have a future now that I didn't 2 days ago. I'm thinking I barely know you, Dante, but I've never felt safer with anyone. I'm thinking I have no idea what to do next." She settled on, "I'm worried about what happens now." Honesty was easier with him than she expected. Brandon won't just give up. Even if he's spooked, he'll strike back in some way. It's how he is. Her voice grew hushed. "Especially since I ran away publicly. He'll want to punish me." Dante's expression hardened as she spoke, but he simply nodded. "I agree. Men like him, they tend to escalate when they lose control. I don't intend to give him the chance." Leah looked down, gathering courage. "Dante, I'm scared of what he might do next. He still has..." At that exact moment, a buzzing sound from across the room interrupted her. It was a cell phone vibrating on the coffee table. Not Dante's primary phone, which lay by his plate, but another device, sleeker and newer. Leah recognized it as one of the items that had been in the shopping bag with her clothes. She'd seen it earlier and thought perhaps Dante had gotten her a phone as well, but she wasn't sure. Now it lit up and vibrated insistently. "That's yours," Dante confirmed, following her gaze. "I had a secure phone set up for you, untraceable and with a new number." He got up and retrieved it, bringing it to her. "Only a few people have this number." Leah accepted the phone. It felt strange holding one again after leaving hers behind. "Who has it?" "I gave the number to your friend, Kara," Dante said, "and one or two of my associates who may need to reach us about the situation." Leah's head snapped up. "Kara, you spoke to her?" He inclined his head. "Briefly, yes. Early this morning. I thought you might want her to know you're safe, and I needed some information from her." At Leah's questioning look, he continued, "I asked if she could discreetly gather some of your personal belongings, clothes, any important documents, from wherever you'd be comfortable. She mentioned you have things at her apartment." Leah nodded, heart swelling with gratitude. Kara was her closest friend, one of the few people she'd confided in about wanting to leave. For Dante to have already looped her in meant the world. "Thank you, truly." Her phone buzzed again, displaying Kara, 5 missed calls, and now an incoming call from her. Leah quickly answered, putting it on speaker so Dante could hear too if needed. "Kara." A burst of relieved noise came through. "Leah! Oh my God! Leah, are you okay? I've been worried sick." Kara's voice was choked with emotion. "I saw the news this morning and tried to call." "News?" Leah blurted, heart skipping. "What news?" Kara took a breath. "There's a video," she said carefully. "Some kind of email leak sent to media and who knows who else. They're talking about it on local news. A video of you at some party. It doesn't look good, Leah. They're saying you attacked some guy." Even though Leah expected this, having run through the scenario in her nightmares countless times, hearing it confirmed sent a wave of dizziness through her. She gripped the phone tightly. "Oh God!" Her free hand sought the edge of the table to ground herself. Dante was immediately beside her, one strong hand bracing reassuringly at her back. "It's all lies," Kara rushed on. "I told everyone at work it has to be fake or out of context. But you know how gossip is. And the police, Leah? The news said the police are looking into it because the man's some politician's son. They're talking about possible assault charges against you." Leah felt the blood drain from her face. This was worse than even Brandon's usual threats. He hadn't just sent it to media, he'd given it to the police. By preemptively framing it as evidence of a crime, he'd forced their hand to investigate. And she wasn't even there to defend herself. He likely counted on that. In a single stroke, he'd made her a social pariah and potentially a fugitive. 6 hours. He hadn't been bluffing. He'd executed his threat and then some. Dante's hand pressed a little more firmly at her back, recalling her to the present. "Kara, listen to me," he interjected calmly, leaning closer to the phone. "My name is Dante Moretti. I'm a friend of Leah's." There was a subtle emphasis on friend that Leah didn't miss, perhaps for simplicity. He wasn't going to detail their odd circumstances. "We're aware of the video. It's doctored, and we can prove it." Kara was silent for a beat, likely processing who this man addressing her was. Then, in true Kara fashion, she found her voice and an edge of protectiveness. "Are you the one who called me earlier? The, Mafia guy?" She hissed the last part in a whisper, as if someone might overhear. Clearly, Leah's late-night revelations to her hadn't fully sunk in until this moment. Leah almost smiled despite the situation. That was Kara, tactless when shocked. Dante, to his credit, didn't seem offended. His lips twitched. "I suppose you could call me that," he replied dryly. "Don't worry, Kara. Leah is safe with me." Kara made a soft "oh" sound, then cleared her throat. "Right. Well, thank you for protecting her. Honestly, I was skeptical when she told me." Leah cut in gently. "Kara, I trust him." The simple declaration hung in the air, and Dante's hand on her back paused slightly, as if the weight of those words impacted him. On the phone, Kara exhaled. "Okay, then I trust him too. Now about this video." "Leah, what do you need me to do? I've been chewing out anyone spreading rumors, but..." Leah's eyes stung with tears. Kara said immediately, "I'll pack a bag of her clothes, toiletries, any documents I can find. I won't go to her apartment, Brandon's probably creeping around there anyway. I have some stuff of hers at mine, and I can buy whatever else and expense it to his bastard account later. She huffed angrily. Also, sorry. Brandon's sister, Emily, called me this morning looking for Leah. She sounded upset, but I played dumb. I have a feeling she's not in on his schemes, poor kid. Leah's brow furrowed. Emily must have found out about the video or been alarmed by something Brandon or their parents said. Emily was only 19, away at college. She probably woke up to a scandal involving her friend, future sister-in-law. Leah made a mental note. Emily might be an ally, but contacting her now could put the girl in danger with Brandon around. Best to leave that aside for the moment. Kara, Dante said, thank you. One more thing. Please keep Leah's whereabouts between us. The fewer who know, the better for now. Obviously, Kara retorted, as if offended he'd even suggest she'd blab. I'm not telling a soul. I'll keep my phone on me. And Leah, her tone gentled. Hang in there, okay? This is going to blow over. And when it does, you and I are going to have a long vacation somewhere far away from any Scots or mafiosos or drama. Got it? A tear finally escaped Leah's eye, rolling down her cheek. She quickly wiped it with her sleeve, mindful of Dante's presence. Got it, she whispered. I love you, Kara. Love you too, hun. Be safe. Kara's voice was thick with emotion before she hung up. Silence settled in the wake of the call. Leah carefully placed the phone on the table. Her hands were trembling again, the reality of the video's release hitting full force now. It's out, she murmured numbly. Everyone's seen it. They think I'm a monster, her worst fear, realized in black and white headlines and viral gossip. She could already imagine the sneers, the judgmental looks, former colleagues whispering behind her back. And legally, did the police truly believe she was some violent criminal? Would there be a warrant? Dante shifted his chair closer, turning it to face her directly. Look at me, he said softly. Leah did, blinking back tears. This is exactly what Brandon wants. Your fear, your despair. Don't give it to him. How can I not? She whispered. He's destroying me. I feel like there's nothing left of my reputation, my privacy, She bit down hard to stop a sob. That video, it was my deepest humiliation, and he's made it front-page news. Her voice cracked. Where do I even start to fix that? Dante's jaw flexed. We start by proving it's a lie. I told you, I will handle the video. It will be exposed as a fake, and Brandon's narrative will crumble. Leah searched his eyes. She wanted to believe him, and some part of her did. This was a man clearly capable of moving mountains if he decided to. But how to disprove something like that? Tech experts he'd mentioned last night, and indeed he'd already been moving on that front if he knew it was doctored. Did he have hackers or something? It dawned on her that yes, if he truly was Mafia, he likely had access to quite a few specialists in various gray area skills. She took a shaky breath. I remembered something, she said, sniffing once and gathering her thoughts. From that night, the video... She closed her eyes, recalling the gilded parlor room of the party where the incident happened. There was a mirror on the wall behind me. When that man grabbed me, I knocked into a table with a mirror above it. If the camera angle caught any glimpse of that mirror, it would show him on me first. But the video Brandon has, it cut straight to me pushing him and him falling, then some chaos. If there's any weird jump, or if someone can recover the raw clip and see the mirror, maybe that proves I wasn't the aggressor. Dante listened intently, and by the time she finished, a slow, satisfied smile appeared on his face. A predator's smile. That's excellent, he said. Very specific. I'll make sure our tech analysis focuses on reflections or any cropping around that timestamp. Leah nodded, a tiny spark of empowerment lighting within her. She'd contributed something useful, something only she could. It felt good to do more than just react in terror. Also, Dante continued, my associates have already begun digging up everything on Brandon's activities. If he's been sloppy anywhere, or if there are witnesses we can flip, we'll find out. The more leverage we have to keep him on the defensive, the better. He wanted to play dirty in public? Fine. We'll drown out his lies with bigger truths. There was a hard edge of anticipation in Dante's voice that sent a small thrill through Leah. She realized Dante was well and truly engaged in this battle now, not just as a protector, but as a strategist. He was treating it almost like a chess match or a war campaign, and he was formidable. For the first time since the video revelation, Leah felt a tiny bloom of hope. Perhaps Brandon's scorched earth tactic could backfire. A knock at the suite door jolted both of them. 3 firm knocks, then silence. Leah tensed automatically, fear shooting through her. Could it be hotel staff? Or, God forbid, police already? Dante placed a reassuring hand over hers briefly. It's okay. He approached the door cautiously and peered through the peephole. It's Luca, he said over his shoulder. Then he unlatched the locks and opened the door to let the man in. Leah watched curiously as a man in a black jacket stepped inside. He was in his late 20s or early 30s, with keen dark eyes and a build that suggested he could handle himself in a fight. He nodded respectfully to Dante before his gaze flickered to Leah. He gave her a polite, somewhat surprised nod as well. Ma'am? Leah managed a small smile, unsure of the proper etiquette. Luca was presumably one of Dante's employees, underlings. It was surreal to interact in what felt like a secret agent world. What do you have? Dante asked, closing the door behind Luca and gesturing him further in. Luca produced a tablet from under his arm and powered it on. It's as we suspected, boss. Brandon sent the email with the video link around 7 o'clock this morning to various media outlets and also directly to someone at the police commissioner's office. We tracked the original upload to a cloud server registered under a fake company, but our guys cracked it. Origin was a laptop on the Scott family's network, likely at their estate. Dante's lip curled. So he ran home to do this, coward that he is. Luca allowed himself a tight smirk. Looks like it. Now, we already have some good news. Our tech team has analyzed the video file thoroughly. He stepped forward and handed Dante the tablet, then angled it so Leah could see as well. It showed a paused video frame, her own face, looking distressed and disoriented under garish party lighting. A man's blurred figure in front of her. Even seeing a still was enough to make her stomach clench. Dante's hand subtly brushed her shoulder for support. See here, Luca said, pointing to a section of the image, a sliver of a gilded mirror just visible at the edge of the frame. We enhanced this portion. For a few frames, you can see a reflection of the guy behind you. It clearly shows him grabbing you first. Brandon's edited version cut those frames out or obscured them with a fake motion blur, but our team recovered it from the file's metadata. The timestamp also jumps inconsistently, proof of tampering. He hit play on a short loop, and Leah's breath caught. It was grainy, but obvious. In the mirror's reflection, the man who'd assaulted her was gripping her arms from behind, his face predatory, then static, a jump, and the scene continued to what Brandon had distributed, her shoving the man off and him stumbling. Tears of relief sprang to Leah's eyes. Proof. There it was. She hadn't imagined that mirror. It had captured the truth like a silent ally. Dante let out a satisfied grunt. That bastard. He thought he was clever, but not clever enough. He looked at Leah, and she saw genuine admiration in his eyes. You did it. Your keen memory just handed us the smoking gun. She flushed under his praise, wiping an errant tear away. I'm just glad it was there. Here's more, Luca added, swiping to another screen of notes. We also identified the other man in the video as Robert Salucci, a councilman's son. Public persona, squeaky clean, but off the record. Known for harassing women. There were rumors of a similar incident at a club last year, but it got hushed up. We suspect Brandon brokered some deal between them the night of the party, hence him drugging Leah to comply. Luca's expression showed clear disgust. We contacted Salucci this morning, under the guise of being from a newspaper about the leaked clip. The idiot bragged that he barely remembers that crazy chick who threw herself at him, almost certainly a rehearsed line given by Brandon's team. But he slipped that his father told him to keep his mouth shut and let Brandon's narrative run. Leah's fists clenched on her lap. Hearing that scum lie about her, and clearly being coached to do so, made her so angry she shook. Dante noticed, and gently rested a hand over hers again, a grounding touch. So Salucci's in on it, Dante summarized coldly, at least to the point of playing along. Fine. He looked at Luca with a predatory smile. And we'll deal with that snake soon. How about other angles? The police? Luca nodded. One step ahead of you. Using a back channel, we passed the reflective proof frames anonymously to a few key media contacts and a friend in the police tech division. They should receive it within the hour. It will cast serious doubt on the video's legitimacy. The narrative will start to shift. Leah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Dante and his network had, in a matter of hours, accomplished more to defend her than she imagined possible. You're sending it out already? She asked, voice trembling with gratitude and anxiety. Once this counter-evidence hit, things would really get explosive. Yes, Dante answered, his tone decisive. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, as they say. Brandon wanted a public spectacle. He'll get one. Only it won't be the kind he envisioned. Dante's eyes gleamed with a fierce satisfaction. He tried to destroy you in public. We'll turn it right back on him, in front of everyone. Leah's heart pounded. This was it, the public reversal that Dante had promised. She felt overwhelmed. Hope, fear, excitement swirling together. Could it really work out that way? Would people actually believe her over Brandon once the truth was out? She'd been conditioned to think no one would, but Dante was giving her reason to think otherwise. Luca cleared his throat, then added carefully, "There's one more thing. Brandon, he seems to be spiraling further. Our guys monitoring his communications intercepted something. He's apparently furious that Leah hasn't been found yet. He was overheard yelling on a call that he won't let her slip away, and he's going to end this once and for all, today." Luca grimaced. "We think he might be planning something immediate, possibly trying to track down where you are, Leah, or hurting someone you care about to flush you out." A chill of dread coursed through Leah. End this, once and for all. That sounded ominous. Kara, she gasped, or Emily. He might try to use Emily. Leah remembered Kara mentioning Emily called worried. If Brandon got wind that Leah had talked to Kara, or thought Emily was sympathetic to her, he might lash out at them. Especially Emily, who he could easily lure in. Dante's expression had already turned thunderous. "We've placed protection on Kara as of this morning, quietly," he assured Leah, touching her shoulder. "A couple of my men are watching her apartment and work. Nothing will happen to her." Leah exhaled shakily, a wave of relief making her almost lightheaded. She hadn't even thought to ask, but Dante had anticipated that risk. "As for Emily," Dante continued, "that situation is developing. It appears she went home. Likely Brandon or their family called her back from school. We'll keep tabs. I doubt he'd physically hurt his own sister. But with men like him, collateral damage can happen." Leah nodded, biting her lip. She prayed Emily would stay safe. Emily was sweet, and had always tried to intervene subtly when she saw Brandon treating Leah poorly, though she never fully knew the extent. The idea of Emily in danger because of this made Leah sick. Dante seemed to read her mind. He leaned down slightly so his eyes were level with Leah's. "We won't let him hurt anyone else," he said firmly. "I give you my word." Leah met his gaze. What do we do now?" she asked, barely above a whisper. So much was moving so fast. Evidence out to media, Brandon possibly on the warpath. Dante gently squeezed her shoulder. "Now, we go on the offensive." He looked to Luca. "Have the car brought around. We'll be leaving shortly." Leah's stomach did a flip. "Leaving? Where are we going?" Dante's face set into a determined, controlled fury, the look of a man who just resolved to cross a line. To settle this, publicly and definitively. He straightened and adjusted his cuffs, as though preparing for battle. Brandon wanted a fight in the court of public opinion. He's about to get annihilated there, and if he still doesn't get the message, Dante's voice dropped to a lethal purr. "I have no problem ending it by other means." A slight gasp escaped Leah. She understood his implication. If all else failed, Dante would handle Brandon permanently. The old Leah might have balked at the thought of vigilante violence, but after everything, she couldn't summon much sympathy for Brandon's fate. Still, she didn't want bloodshed if it could be avoided, for Dante's sake as much as anything. She lightly touched his arm. "Let's just expose him." Expose. That will be enough, right? Dante searched her face, and something softened just a touch in his expression. "If possible, yes. I prefer that route too, for you." He gently brushed a strand of hair away from her bruised cheek. "You deserve justice, not just vengeance." Leah felt her eyes sting again. How was it that he always seemed to say exactly what she needed to hear? She mustered a smile. "With you in my corner, maybe I can have both." A slow, proud grin spread across Dante's face at that. He nodded. "That's my girl." The casual endearment warmed her. Coming from him, it felt empowering rather than belittling. Luca tactfully busied himself packing up the tablet, and giving orders into a discreet earpiece, pretending not to notice the charged moment between his boss and Leah. Within the hour, everything was in motion. News outlets were beginning to question the video's authenticity on air, thanks to the evidence Dante's team provided. A couple of online papers had even published short pieces highlighting the suspicious editing and calling for an official investigation into potential fraud. Public sentiment was seething with doubt toward Brandon's story. Dante and Leah rode down the private service elevator to the parking garage to avoid prying eyes. Luca led the way. Leah clutched the new phone and a tablet loaded with live news feeds. Her heart galloped with a mix of anxiety and adrenaline. Inside the elevator, Dante reached over and took her hand firmly in his. "Nervous?" he asked, rubbing his thumb gently across her knuckles. She swallowed. "A little. I'm not exactly used to confrontations. Brandon, he always controlled the narrative. Now suddenly it's slipping from him, and I know him. He'll lash out unpredictably." Dante brought her hand up and, in a surprisingly tender gesture, pressed a kiss to the back of it. Leah's breath caught at the warmth of his lips and the chivalrous intimacy of it. "Whatever he tries, I'll be right there," he murmured. "He won't touch you. Trust me." "I do," she replied, key and meant it with every fiber of her being. When the elevator doors opened to the garage, Luca motioned that the coast was clear. Dante kept hold of Leah's hand as they moved quickly toward a black luxury SUV idling nearby. Another man, one of Dante's presumably, stood by the passenger door, scanning their surroundings. Leah's heart jolted at a memory. The last time they'd been in this garage, Brandon had ambushed them. She tightened her grip on Dante instinctively, eyes darting to every shadow. "It's all right," Dante assured quietly, noting her vigilance. "I've doubled security. He won't surprise us again." Leah nodded and let him help her into the back seat of the SUV. Dante slid in beside her, Luca taking the driver's seat. 2 more men were in a second car trailing them, she noticed. It felt oddly comforting to have a small convoy. As the vehicles pulled out, Leah's phone buzzed. A text from Kara. "Wow, tech analysts on Channel 6 basically just said the video is bogus and possibly an intentional smear." Public sentiment turning. "You go, girl!" Leah exhaled shakily and showed the text to Dante with a tentative smile. He grinned. "Good. The world's starting to see the truth. Now, we make sure they can't ignore the rest of it." He then handed her a slim folder from beside him. "We have copies of legal documents here, restraining order requests, a prepared statement of your own. If all goes to plan, Brandon will be served publicly, and I have some extra evidence to unveil at the right moment." Leah accepted the folder and peeked in. Her own petition for a restraining order, already filled out with details she'd given Dante about past abuse. A printed statement clarifying the video events and accusing Brandon of coercion and harassment. And, she gasped softly, a small stack of printed photos. They were of bruises on her body, dated from various times. Some she had discreetly taken pictures of on her phone and sent to Kara, or kept as proof, but never dared use. Dante's team must have pulled them from her cloud backup or phone records. There were also screenshots of threatening text messages Brandon had sent her over the months, ones she had shown Kara and saved, hoping one day to use as evidence. Tears pricked her eyes as she realized just how thoroughly Dante had armed them for this showdown. "I can't believe you gathered all this. I didn't know anyone still had these." "Kara helped with some," Dante said, "and we recovered a lot from your devices once we had access. I'm sorry you had to relive those to give us the information, but it's powerful evidence." Leah nodded, jaw set. It hurt to look at those pictures and texts, yes, but it fueled a fire in her. This is the truth. My truth. If the world was going to see anything about her, she wanted it to be this truth, not Brandon's lies. A phone call came through Dante's line. He answered via speaker. An unfamiliar male voice said, "I'm boss." He took the bait. His car just left the estate at high speed, headed toward city center. Dante's eyes gleamed. "Tracking active?" "Yes, sir. He's got 2 of his goons with him. Looks like they're heading for the police HQ or perhaps the press conference site." "Let me know when they arrive," Dante said, then glanced at Leah as he hung up. Brandon's on the move, likely thinking he can swagger in somewhere and double down on his lies. He's probably expecting to gloat with police or media. Leah swallowed. "Or he's coming to find me." "He doesn't know where you are," Dante said confidently. "We've been careful. No, he'll likely go to the police station to demand they issue an arrest or something dramatic. Fortunately, that's exactly where we want to go too." Leah's eyes widened. "We're going to the police?" Dante smiled cunningly. Not inside the station, but out front. I arranged for a little gathering. Some media, a few cooperative officers. By the time Brandon gets there, he'll be walking into a trap of truth. Leah tried to steady her breathing. This was going to be intense. I can do this. I'm not alone. She felt Dante's hand settle over hers again, and realized she'd been wringing them in her lap. You okay? He asked softly. She met his gaze. Ask me again when it's over. He chuckled. Fair enough. Just remember everything we have. Facts, evidence, witnesses. We're not hoping for the best. We're making it happen. Leah mustered a determined nod. She repeated Dante's words in her mind like a mantra. We will show the truth. We will end this. The SUV came to a gentle stop. We're here, Luca announced. Through the tinted window, Leah saw they were on the street just around the corner from the Central Police Precinct. It was a busy midday scene. Press vans, photographers, and a small crowd of onlookers milled about in front of the grand stone steps of the building. Her heart leapt into her throat. Dante moved swiftly. Time to shine, he said, his voice both calming and energizing. They exited the car, and immediately 2 of Dante's men flanked Leah unobtrusively, guiding her and Dante toward the station steps. It happened in a blur. One moment, Leah was an anonymous figure among many. The next, and a reporter's sharp-eyed gaze landed on her and Dante, and a shout went up. There she is! Leah Williams! Heads turned. Cameras pivoted. A rush of people moved toward them. For a split second, Leah felt the instinct to bolt, or at least hide behind Dante. But he gently squeezed her hand and whispered, Hold your head high. We have nothing to hide. She lifted her chin. Flashes went off. Reporters barraged her with questions. Ms. Williams, do you have a comment on the video? Is it true you attacked Councilman Salucci's son? Are you going to jail? When did you meet Dante Moretti? Dante's presence and a few uniformed officers, clearly placed by Dante's influence, kept the press from getting too close or unruly. He gave a slight nod to an older police sergeant who seemed to be waiting for them on the steps. The officer stepped forward authoritatively and bellowed, Order! The lady has a statement! A hush fell, or at least as much of one as could in a crowd of that size. Leah's pulse pounded in her ears. This was it. She was really doing this. She felt Dante release her hand, and instead place it supportively at the small of her back, just barely touching, enough to remind her he was there, but letting her stand at the forefront. Leah took a deep breath, clutching the folder of documents to her chest, and addressed the sea of expectant faces. The video that was released of me is a lie, she began, voice miraculously steady. It was heavily edited to accuse me of a crime I did not commit. She paused, finding strength as she saw a few nods. They'd heard about the mirror evidence by now. She continued louder. What the video doesn't show is that I was drugged that night by my ex-fiancé Brandon Scott, and I was assaulted by the man in that video. I was defending myself. Her voice gained power as the injustice of it all fueled her. For months, I have been a victim of Brandon Scott's abuse and blackmail. He has hurt me physically. She lifted her chin, exposing the edge of the bruise on her face in case they hadn't noticed. And emotionally, he threatened to ruin me if I ever spoke up or tried to leave. When I finally found the courage to run from him, he released that video to punish me and destroy my reputation. A ripple went through the crowd. Cameras zoomed in. This was drama. A wealthy heir turned domestic abuser story unfolding live. Leah's knees felt weak, but she pressed on, emboldened by a fierce sense of enough is enough. I won't hide anymore, she declared, her voice resonating over the courtyard. I am here in public to tell the truth. I have proof of his abuse. She held up copies of photos and texts with a shaking hand, and an officer helped pin them to a display board that had been set up, another thoughtful preparation by Dante. Gasps and murmurs as lenses captured images of her bruises, of Brandon's threatening text like, "You'll be sorry if you leave me, I promise." Leah spotted a familiar face in the throng. Kara, standing off to the side, eyes shining with encouragement and pride. Beside her, surprisingly, was Emily Scott, tears on her cheeks. Leah's breath hitched. Emily mouthed, "I'm sorry," with a devastated expression. Leah offered the slightest nod of understanding and forgiveness, then refocused. "My ex-fiancé, Brandon, is not the victim here," Leah said, feeling a surge of vindication. He is a serial abuser and a liar, and I am done being afraid of him." As if on cue, screeching tires cut through the air. A black car swerved to a stop at the curb opposite the station, and out sprang the devil himself, Brandon. He looked wild-eyed and enraged, flanked by 2 of his father's burly security men. The crowd parted as he stormed toward the steps. "You delusional little slut," Brandon roared, zeroing in on Leah. The microphones surely picked it up, broadcasting his words live. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His face was contorted with fury, a vein bulging at his temple. In that moment, he no longer looked like the charming socialite he pretended to be. He looked exactly like the violent, petulant abuser he was. And dozens of cameras were catching every nuance. Leah realized with a mix of catharsis and fear that Brandon was publicly self-destructing. "Everything I said," Leah addressed the crowd but kept her eyes on Brandon, "is true, and you know it." "Lies!" Brandon shouted. He started up the steps, but Dante stepped forward smoothly, finally revealing himself fully to the public view. A collective murmur arose, recognition perhaps of who Dante was, or at least speculation. Some surely knew him by reputation as well. Dante didn't lay a hand on Brandon, but his mere presence halted the man's advance. Brandon glared hatefully. "This has nothing to do with you, whoever the hell you think you are. Stay out of it." Dante's voice was deadly calm and pitched to Carrie. "I'm someone who doesn't take kindly to men who terrorize women. Leah is under my protection. You want to get to her? You'll have to go through me." A hush. Brandon sneered, but Leah caught the glint of unease in his eyes. "Protection? Huh. You have no idea what you're involving yourself in. My father—" "Your father," Dante cut in with soft menace, "is not here to save you. And even if he were, he couldn't, not from this." Dante made a subtle gesture with his hand. In an instant, one of Dante's men, disguised among the press, moved forward and handed something to the waiting police sergeant. The sergeant nodded and marched down the steps toward Brandon. Brandon's bravado faltered. "What is this?" he barked as the officer held out a document. "Brandon Scott," the older cop announced loudly. "You are hereby served with a temporary restraining order filed by Ms. Leah Williams, effective immediately. You are to stay 100 yards away from her at all times." The officer's lip curled. "And given the evidence presented today, I suspect criminal charges won't be far behind, against you." A cheer actually went up from some onlookers. Leah's heart soared. Brandon looked utterly stunned, as if he couldn't comprehend that he, the golden boy who always skated free, was being publicly chastised. Color flooded his face crimson. "This is absurd. You can't do this." He moved to tear the papers, but the officer intentionally let them drop at his feet instead, denying him even that minor satisfaction. Brandon whirled to face Leah again, and now his mask was fully off. "You think this is over?" he snarled, voice cracking with malice. "You think you've won, you miserable little—" "Enough!" Dante's voice boomed like thunder, silencing Brandon's tirade. He descended one step deliberately so he was just slightly above Brandon on the steps, looking down at him with contempt. "You wanted a crowd, Brandon? Good. Truth loves witnesses." Dante extended an arm, almost like a showman revealing the grand finale. At that cue, Luca and another of Dante's men stepped forward into view of everyone, holding something aloft. A tablet playing the raw video evidence with the mirror reflection. It was connected to a small portable projector that displayed it onto the pale stone of the station wall, large enough for all to see clearly. The image looped, Leah struggling as the man groped her, the reflection proving it, then the violent cut. Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. Brandon stared, momentarily speechless. His own lie was playing out, exposed behind him. Phones captured his stricken expression. Reporters converged, smelling blood in the water. A female journalist boldly pushed forward and thrust her mic toward Brandon. "Mr. Scott, what do you have to say about this evidence that the video was faked? Did you doctor it to frame Ms. Williams?" Brandon stumbled over his words. No, it was just edited for length. She's crazy. She attacked him. I only tried to protect her, everyone, from herself." His incoherent stammering did him no favors. It was abundantly clear who looked crazed here, and it wasn't Leah. Another reporter yelled, "What about the allegations of abuse? Those texts and photos, are those fake too? Did you send those threats?" Brandon's eyes darted around wildly. Leah almost felt pity seeing him like that. cornered, desperate. Then she remembered every slap, every cruel word, every terrifying chase, and her spine steeled. She stepped down one step, coming shoulder to shoulder with Dante. Immediately, she felt Dante's steady presence bolster her. "Brandon," she said, and the quiet of her voice somehow carried, slicing through the commotion. He looked at her, his face a cocktail of rage and, incredibly, panic. "It's over. You can't hurt me anymore." "You bitch," he hissed, low and shaking. "You think you'll be safe with him?" He jabbed a finger toward Dante. "He's a criminal. You're jumping from the frying pan to the fire, Leah." He was losing his grip, saying whatever to scare her. "He'll chew you up and spit you out. People like me, like him, we're users. You're just a toy." Dante's eyes blazed, but Leah gently touched his arm, signaling she could handle this final piece. She leveled a long look at Brandon, one that encompassed years of pain and the strength she'd finally found. "No, Brandon, I'm not the one who's a toy anymore. You are." She gestured to the throng of cameras and spectators now hanging on his every word. "A toy of your own making. You wanted a spectacle. Now everyone sees what you truly are." Brandon's mouth worked soundlessly. He seemed to finally register the hostile stares around him, the cold distancing of even his own bodyguards inching away, likely not wanting to be tainted by association now, the sympathetic look some officers gave Leah. His power in this scenario was gone. Utterly. And he knew it. You'll regret this." He tried one last time, but his voice was barely audible, breaking. It sounded pathetic, even to himself. He turned, shoving past a few journalists. "I'm done here. Out of my way," he barked, trying to salvage dignity as he stumbled back toward his car. Cameras followed his retreat. One caught him wiping angrily at his eyes. Tears of frustration, perhaps. He was experiencing for the first time real consequences in real time. He almost looked pitiable in that second. Then he was gone, speeding off recklessly. Police sirens in the distance suggested maybe someone might even pull him over for that. Leah didn't care. He could run, but he had nowhere to hide from this. What followed was a controlled chaos of questions, formal statements to be made, and protocols. The police commissioner himself had come out, looking flustered, and assured that a full investigation into Brandon Scott's actions would commence. Reporters clamored for comments from Leah. Her friend Kara rushed up the steps and threw arms around her in a fierce hug, nearly causing Leah to lose balance until Dante steadied both women with a chuckle. Emily hung back, not wanting to intrude, but Leah caught her eye and gave her a small nod of reassurance. Emily mouthed, "Thank you," and Leah knew in time they'd speak properly. Amidst all this, Dante remained a constant, protective presence. He answered some media queries with cool, PR-friendly remarks about justice being served and no tolerance for abuse. He politely declined to confirm or deny any Mafia affiliations with a smirk that left them more intrigued. But mainly, he stayed right at Leah's side, a grounding hand at the small of her back or her arm whenever she needed support in the throng. At one point, as the intensity died down and police ushered media to file formal stories, Leah found herself standing with Dante on the now mostly clear steps. Kara was chatting animatedly to a news crew. "My girl's so brave," she was saying proudly. And Emily had been taken aside by a gentle-faced officer to give a statement about what she knew, possibly to be used against her brother later. Leah hoped Emily would be shielded from too much fallout. The poor girl was an unintended victim in all this, too. Leah exhaled a long breath. It was over. Not the legal proceedings, they were just beginning, but the immediate, terrifying ordeal was done. She felt lighter than air, like she could float away now that the crushing weight was lifted. Only one thing kept her firmly tethered and present. Dante's warm hand now clasping hers. She turned to him, eyes shining. "You," she breathed, struggling to find adequate words. "You saved me. In every way a person can be saved." Dante smiled. A genuine, soft smile that she hadn't seen before. It lit up the silver in his eyes and made that tiny dimple appear. "You saved yourself, Leah," he replied gently. "I just gave you a little boost." She let out a watery laugh, tears finally spilling. This time, tears of relief and joy. "A boost? Dante, you went to war for me." His free hand came up to cup her cheek, brushing away a tear with his thumb. "You were worth every battle." His voice was rough with emotion and sincerity. You made me remember what it's like to care, to truly care beyond myself." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I haven't felt that in a long time. Maybe ever." Leah's heart skipped. In his eyes, she saw vulnerability, a hint of fear that she might dismiss it or be frightened off by his confession, as if she could be. This man, who some would label dangerous, who was certainly powerful, had been nothing but safe and tender with her. He'd put her well-being above his own, time and again in these last tumultuous days, and she realized with a sudden clarity that rivaled the noon sunlight, she was hopelessly, irretrievably in love with him. Perhaps had been since the moment he opened that closet door and promised, "He will never hurt you again." She covered his hand on her cheek with her own, and turned her face to press a kiss into his palm, a sweet, grateful gesture that nevertheless sent a slight murmur through the few onlookers still watching. She didn't care. Let them see. This was truth, too. "Dante," she whispered, gazing up at him with all the love and gratitude swelling in her chest. "You have a gentler soul than you know. You didn't just protect me, you healed me." She blinked, new tears falling. I love you. I hope you realize that." A quiet gasp left him, as if the breath had been stolen from his lungs. For an awful heartbeat, Leah wondered if she'd misstepped. But then a radiant, almost boyish grin broke across Dante's face. It was like watching the sun emerge from behind storm clouds. He let out a small laugh of amazement. "You love me," he repeated, as though tasting the words to make sure they were real. Leah nodded, blushing but steady. "Yes, I do. Dante's eyes glistened now too, and he pulled her gently into his embrace. One strong arm encircled her waist, the other hand cradling the back of her head. Leah melted against him as he pressed his forehead to hers. In that intimate space, he murmured, voice thick, "I love you, Leah. Dio. I love you so much it scared me at first." He let out a shaky breath. "I thought I was incapable of that kind of love. You proved me wrong." Joy, warm and effervescent, fizzed through her entire being. Leah slid her arms up around his neck, standing on tiptoe, ignoring the slight soreness of her muscles. Nothing mattered except him and her, and this hard-won happiness. "Thank you," she whispered, nose brushing his. He arched a brow, smirking gently, even as a tear escaped one of his eyes. "For what?" "For being the first person to make me feel safe and cherished." Leah closed her eyes briefly. "You kept every promise." Dante's only answer was to tilt her chin and capture her lips with his. The world around them faded into a cheer from somewhere. Kara's exuberant "whoo" was identifiable amid it. The kiss was tender at first, a question and an answer all at once, then deepened as Dante's arms tightened possessively around her. Leah sighed into him, threading her fingers through his silky dark hair, losing herself in the taste and feel of this man who had become her hero and heart. When they finally parted, breathless and foreheads resting together, Leah laughed softly. "We probably just made front-page news again." Dante chuckled, not the least bit bothered. "Let it be. This time it's for something good." She smiled, eyes shining. Around them, life went on, the press dispersing to file stories of Brandon's downfall, police officers busy, bystanders chatting excitedly about what they'd witnessed. But within the small circle of Dante's embrace, Leah felt a peaceful certainty. They had faced down the darkness and come out into the light together. As they descended the steps hand in hand to rejoin their friends, Leah glanced at Dante with playful lightness. "So, what now, Mr. Moretti?" He looked down at her with an expression of such adoration it made her heart flutter. "Whatever we want, Ms. Williams." Then he paused, his face taking on a more serious, though still joyous, cast. "My life, it isn't a typical fairy tale. There are parts of my world that are still dangerous." Leah squeezed his hand. "I'm not afraid. Not with you." She meant it. She'd seen the honorable man behind the Mafia persona, and she trusted him implicitly. Dante's grin returned. "Be careful, or I'll start thinking we make a pretty good team in danger." Leah laughed. "We do." She leaned into him as they walked. "But maybe we've earned a little calm for a while. No closets, no chases. Maybe just a vacation somewhere quiet." Kara suggested a beach. Dante's eyes gleamed. "A beach holiday with my love? That can be arranged." He then lowered his voice suggestively. "Though I can't promise no excitement. I have quite a few ideas how to keep things interesting." Leah flushed and swatted his arm lightly, grinning. "As long as those interesting things involve peace and privacy, sign me up." "Done," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You'll have all the peace, privacy, and happiness I can give you, Leah. That I promise too." Leah believed him. After all, Dante Moretti had proven one thing beyond any doubt. He was a man of his word. And as she walked arm in arm with him toward their waiting car, Kara and Emily trailing with hopeful smiles, Leah felt a thrilling sense of a new chapter beginning. She had escaped the closet of fear that once confined her and stepped willingly into the arms of a man who had shown her true safety and love. The nightmare was over. Her toxic ex was defeated by his own hand, and the truth laid bare. In the process, as she had found not just freedom, but an unyielding partner to stand by her side through whatever life threw next. Whatever challenges the future might bring, Leah was unafraid. With Dante, she was ready to face them, together. As they drove away from the site of so many revelations, Leah rested her head on Dante's shoulder. Fingers entwined with his, the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow through the car windows, and she closed her eyes, content. For the first time and as long as she could remember, the future looked bright and open, full of hope, and perhaps even a hint of adventure. And unbeknownst to Leah, tucked away in the evidence files was one last tidbit that Dante had held back for now. Hints of a larger network Brandon had dabbled with in procuring that deepfake video. A shadowy contact, an encoded message implying others had assisted or stood to benefit. Dante hadn't wanted to burden her with it yet. Today was about closure, not new threats. But as he held Leah close, a subtle resolve hardened in him. If there were others out there preying on the innocent, he would root them out too, quietly, for now, to allow Leah her peace. However, that was a concern for another day. In that perfect moment, Dante allowed himself to simply enjoy the feel of Leah in his arms and the knowledge that they had won. She was safe. He pressed a kiss to her hair and murmured in Italian, so softly only she could hear, "Ti amo, anima mia." I love you, my soul. Leah smiled against his shoulder, her heart overflowing. Whatever storms might come, they would weather them. Together. As the city skyline rolled by and the sun began to set in hues of gold and rose, Leah Williams and Dante Moretti drove toward their new beginning, leaving shadows behind and forging ahead into a future lit brightly by truth, love, and the unbreakable bond they had found in each other. Little did they know, as they vanished into the horizon, that a file was already being quietly opened elsewhere, a new name, a new mystery tied to the very syndicate that had helped Brandon's schemes. But that revelation would wait for another time. For now, they had earned their hard-fought happy ending, and come what may, they would face it side by side, unafraid and united.